We recently attended an event put on by someone that's become increasingly polarizing over the years, with other polarizing figures such as Mr. Brexit himself, Nigel Farage, as a guest speaker. Inside the event, it was shrouded in so much secrecy that we were asked to sign something saying that we wouldn't even film. But before being asked to sign, we did capture some footage that we're going to show you. Are you here for the Nomad event? In this video, we're going to take you back to the event that's become one of the most exclusive and maybe the most expensive expat events of the year. We'll unpack for you what we discovered and what shocked us. Let's go inside Nomad Capitalist Live.
You for the Nomad?
Yes. So let's go check that out. Lines were pretty long.
Yeah, I think you can make it go faster though.
We've been here 2 hours.
Yeah. I'm like, not really for me. I don't know, we'll see.
For most, it was a 4-day event, but for some, it was actually 5. We'll talk about that in a minute. The first day started Wednesday evening, and you had registration and then drinks. And then we moved on to the next days, which were opportunities, challenges, and action. But what was that 5th day, and who got that?
All right, we've broken our thoughts down into 4 categories where Kalie and I are going to give you our honest take about the conference. Nomad Capitalist isn't paying us to make this video, and we hope not to offend them by what we have to say. Here are the 4 categories: our favorite sessions and why, the type of people that attended and how that made us feel, what surprised us the most, and if it's worth the money. All right, so I have chosen 3 different sessions that I would like to highlight real quick to give you an indication of the types of things that we talked about there. The first one, we talked about global real estate markets, and it was really cool hearing about different markets that would be good for expats, basically. And one of the ones that really stuck out to me is we talked about Bogota, and the price per square meter in Bogota was 1/3 less on average compared to Lisbon. So making that comparison was super interesting to me, and I found it fascinating just hearing about different places in the world that one could invest in real estate. Because if you know anything about me, if you've been on this channel a bit, you know that I do like to talk about real estate and investing in real estate, and Kalie and I have done that. So that was interesting.
This might sound weird because I normally don't like taxes, and anytime we talk about it, I'm like, ugh, taxes. But I want to see what was up and coming for 2025 for taxes and then also for citizenship. So things to be aware of. And I did see that the Caribbean islands are really upping their taxes, so those might not be as desirable as they used to. Still though, St. Lucia and Antigua is good for families, but then we also are seeing that Malta and Turkey, which have been desirable for taxes, are getting a little stricter now, while Spain is also increasing its threshold. But 2 to look out for would be Uruguay and Argentina, as they're trying to have tax-friendly schemes to bring more people in.
The second thing I really enjoyed was Tony Fernandez, the CEO of AirAsia, was one of the keynote speakers, and he was phenomenal. The guy is an amazing speaker. He's got this charisma that is just, it fills the room. So that was really cool. He spoke about early days when he was working for, I think it was like Warner Music, and he met Richard Branson. So it was almost like a chance meeting that he forced. So he gave me a lot of inspiration in the way that he talked about his personal story and his journey. And then finally, he talked about how he basically made a 1 ringgit investment into a broken airline in Malaysia and built that airline up to be AirAsia, which is now I think it's Southeast Asia or Asia's #1 budget airline. So that was phenomenal. I felt really emboldened by his conversation, his talk to us.
Golden visas and citizenships was another topic that I really enjoyed, and I think if you know me, you know that I like to dig into this because we do this around Portugal and even Spain a little bit too. So I learned that Europe is making it a lot more difficult to have a golden visa. They're upping the prices, they're getting rid of them altogether, they're making a lot more requirements. Portugal still has a decent one, so that's one to look into. But another couple would be the Cayman Islands. What struck me interesting about the Cayman Islands is there is a way to get a UK passport through a golden visa there. Then lastly, an emerging country to be on people's radar is El Salvador, and actually they're really good for those who are interested in crypto.
The third one was mind-blowing, and I think Kalie's actually going to touch on this. I believe it's one of her points as well, but it was about Estonia becoming the first digital country. And the guy that talked about that has been, I guess, a repeat speaker at Nomad Capitalist Live. And he knocked it out of the park and made the digitalization of nations sound so simple that it blows my mind that a place like Portugal can't get on board.
The only one that Josh and I had the same was actually Estonia, the digital country, and I couldn't believe how they do so much digitally and how Portugal is so lacking in this. So I wanted to just eat this up. I was so curious as to how they did it and why they did it. And one thing that struck me as that was really funny was you can do so much digitally, but the one thing, maybe not the one thing, but one important thing you can't do in Estonia digitally is get divorced.
In a room full of what I would assume would be extremely wealthy, successful people that might be only concerned about taxes and not social issues, I was wrong.
I wasn't sure what to expect with the people that we would meet. I guess I kind of assumed they would all be like really rich, snobby people, but it was actually quite the opposite.
I found the people there to be very down to earth. Everybody we met was super nice.
People were really cool, and you could tell that people were there for different reasons. Like some were there to network for sure, handing out business cards and stuff. Others didn't seem interested in networking at all. They just wanted to meet people, they wanted to chat, and they were genuinely interested in other people's stories and where they had lived abroad or if they had ever lived abroad.
One of the things that caught me off guard about these people, in fact, was the reality that they were as curious about what I was doing as what they were doing. So I thought that these people would just be very self-absorbed, but in fact, when Kalie and I said that we were into YouTube or we created YouTube videos, they asked us a lot of questions about it. Or even better, when we said that we had lived in 5 different countries abroad, they were even more curious about, okay, how did you do that? Where did you live? What did you think? And that was cool.
That was another thing that surprised me. We did meet a lot of people who had never done this before. So while Josh and I thought that it would be a lot of people who have been around the same way we have, living in 5 different countries, there were some people who had never lived out of their home country. And then you had other people who had, other people who were doing like 6 months here, 6 months there. So it was quite a variety. So that was cool.
It gave me the space also to learn from them and about how they got on in their journey, because most of these people had achieved things at a much higher level than me, for sure, in terms of investments and earning threshold. So it was really cool getting to meet so many people doing a diverse amount of things. And then also the number of nations that were represented was pretty incredible. In a group of 750 plus attendees, there were 40 different nations that were represented, and people certainly had different mindsets.
And then it was very diverse, people from all over the world. So that is something that I liked. It didn't seem like it was just a bunch of Americans or Canadians or maybe even native English speaking countries. Maybe there were more of those represented, but we saw people from all over the world and got to talk to them about their experiences in their home countries, what it was like living abroad or traveling, their political scene. And so it was quite diverse in that sense.
Not everybody in the room was conservative. Although I would say that the room was certainly conservative leaning. You didn't have a bunch of Americans that were beating their chest about Trump. The conference, I would say, leaned more right in terms of talking maybe better about conservative politics, not Republican politics, but conservative politics, and kind of a little bit of Democrat bashing. That might have made some people uncomfortable. We just kind of took it with a pinch of salt. And we did notice that it was more balanced than we had expected.
So while I thought I would feel out of place because I'm not rich, I didn't feel like that at all. So if the people there are rich, then they didn't kind of show that or make you feel like they were rich and you weren't. So it was a cool experience in that sense. I was highly surprised at how general they kept the information. I thought that they would really dig into certain countries and get specific, and maybe they couldn't because that would be a lot of information, but I thought that they would go a bit deeper, and they didn't. But then it kind of dawned on me that there were a lot of people there that we had met who had never done anything like this before. So while Josh and I are actually going for our second citizenship and we only have a year to go, and people were like, whoa, that's great. Some people hadn't even started that process, hadn't even thought about it, so that's why they were at the conference. So they were really beginner in a sense. So I think that that's actually actually who they were talking to. Those who were in the beginning stages, who were having the ideas, or maybe they were going for like a third or fourth passport and didn't know how to do that, didn't know what taxes would look like, if they were even allowed to hold that many passports. So it was quite introductory, so that surprised me. But again, I thought, you know what, that makes sense, because then Nomad Capitalist just swoops in because they have all the resources. So they talk to those people, they get them excited, and then they say, here's how you're gonna do it, here's how we're gonna help you. So at the end of the day, even though I thought, whoa, it's not going very specific, it's kind of general, it makes sense that that's how they do it.
Another thing that surprised me was how many countries that we discussed that I simply would not consider moving to. And I'm talking about places like Venezuela and Cambodia as being places for real estate acquisition or as emerging markets. I think Andrew gets a lot of stick for choosing countries for the rich like Monaco and Singapore, but in fact, his team doesn't look at the map just like that. There are reasons they choose places that they do, and Caracas and Phnom Penh have a part to play in their world. Just not mine.
Is it worth the money? That's such a good question. And would I go back? I would say yes, I would definitely go back, but probably not every year. I don't know for me if it would be worth the money to go every year, but I think for some people it actually would be.
If we were invited back, we'd definitely go. Ultimately, I thought the conference wasn't geared towards people like us though.
But as far as the conference goes, it was jammed packed with information. So that was very good. And they also had a lot of fun things organized, from dinners to cocktail hours to going to the cigar lounge to lounging at the pool. So they actually filled the in-between times with a lot of things that were optional that you could do. So great for fun, and then also great for networking if that's something that you wanted. So I thought that the actual conference was run really well. One thing that they did struggle with, which I think every conference struggles with, is time management. I think stuff kind of ran over in some areas and they had issues with that, but I think honestly every conference has that. It's really hard to actually stay on schedule. But other than that, it was really well run. I had a great time. It was nice meeting people, and yes, I think it's worth the money. Yes, I would go again for sure.
We're not quite at the level where the networking actually makes sense. We don't have the complex issues that Andrew's team can solve, not to mention we're not its target audience in terms of net worth. But if you're a first-time expat that can afford to go to the event and you're not sure where you want to move or where makes sense for you, there could be a ton of value in going to an event like Nomad Capitalist Live, because they're going to help you and they're going to put several places on your list and maybe help you cross a few of those off.
We had Andrew on our channel and he gave us his 5 top places in Europe to retire, which might surprise you what he chose. So if you want to see that video, then check this out right here, and don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get moving.